Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Stranded, and last episode we left off where I'd unlocked a lot of nodes in the tech tree and I had 70.2 science points left. But I really wanted the nuclear engine because I've rescued a Kerbal from Minmus and from the Mun, so I'm not in any control in this series, of course, but I'm assuming that the next stranded Kerbal that will send out a distress signal is going to be at an interplanetary destination. So really, we could do with having the nuclear engine. So I thought I would do a cheeky interim episode where I don't rescue anyone, but I get some science points in order to unlock that nuclear engine. And we're going to do that by heading into interplanetary space. And while we may not find another Kerbal out there, maybe we just might find ourselves. What a nice thought that would be. Anyway, here you can see I am in the vehicle assembly building, assembling our rocket. This kind of mission is really helpful for those sort of in the early science mode playthrough, where you just want a little bit of extra science, but the mission isn't too challenging. So it won't involve anything like, rendezvousing with the Mun or Minmus and landing on the Mun and Minmus. All we're going to do is leave Kerbin's sphere of influence entirely to enter deep space, run some science experiments, and then do a quick burn back to Kerbin, return and Robert, your father's brother. We get a little bit more science, hopefully enough to unlock the nuclear engine. The rocket is what I like to call an OG Falcon Heavy style rocket, in that it's a triple core stack, but the two outer stacks feed into the center, so that when those two side boosters detach, we're still left with a full tank of fuel. I say this is like an OG style Falcon Heavy because that was the initial plan for SpaceX's Falcon Heavy. It would involve cross-feed, which is actually something that's never been done in the real world before, to my knowledge, and it wasn't done for Falcon Heavy because SpaceX realized there's a good reason why that's never been done before. It's very, very difficult. The way I'm going to set this up is, you can see I'm just sort of right-clicking here. You may need to rewind because I've been playing the footage back quite quickly. But I set the flow priority values of the outer boosters to be higher than the flow priority of the inner booster. So I think they're 41, those two outer boosters, and the inner stage is 30. And I've also enabled crossfeed of those decouplers. What that means is that those three engines will only be pulling fuel from those two outer fuel tanks. And only when they're completely empty will they start pulling from the central core. Now this is a little bit different to how things would behave if you were to use the fuel lines, because once those outer boosters are depleted, those engines will still fire. All three engines will continue burning, pulling from the central core, whereas obviously the fuel lines are only one directional basically. And so what I did was I right-clicked one of the side boosters and just watched the fuel levels, and when the fuel levels hit 0, I just detached, even though the engines were still burning. As soon as they detached, they had no source of fuel, so they immediately went out. Wow, get me talking about the launch rather than just saying, hey guys, this is just a fairly non-standard, non-interesting launch. I've done billions of these before. I'm just going to talk about George Foreman grills or something else completely random. But that's it really. That's the only notable thing I wanted to kind of mention with this launch. And actually, I think this was kind of a learning experience for me because I've never actually used the flow priority tool before, because in my opinion, it's not the most intuitive thing. It's a bit confusing if you're not quite sure how it works. In fact, I wasn't really sure how it worked until I'd made this rocket, but I thought, well, surely the boosters with like the higher number will get priority and the boosters with the lower number won't. And it turns out that was right. Maybe, I guess it is fairly intuitive. But you do have to remember to enable crossfeed of those radial decouplers, otherwise the fuel won't cross across, basically. And that's how you do that. So I think I might start trying to use the flow priority a bit more than just doing what I normally do, which is using the fuel lines, because they don't have any impact on the aerodynamic profile of the rocket. Obviously, fuel lines, although it's only minimal, they do, create some drag. So for something like an Eve lander, or I guess an Eve ascent vehicle, that's like quite important to try and get as little drag as possible. So yeah, it's food for thought. But yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I quite like doing science mode playthroughs every so often, because I'm obviously restricted in terms of the parts I can use. So I have to get a little bit, I wouldn't want to say outside of my comfort zone, because let's face it, this is a fairly easy mission, but it forces me to rethink how I would do certain things. Like normally for this sort of rocket, I wouldn't, if I had to just leave Kerbin's sphere of influence and then return, I probably wouldn't build a rocket that looks like this if I had every part available to me. So it's kind of cool to see, like, I don't know, test myself. Not really sure. Oh, by the way, I completely glossed over the fact that I decided to make my own Kerbal. Because obviously we've had Tim Kerman and Marcus Kerman. I thought we should probably have a Matt Kerman, right? Since it's my series, and I'm a massive narcissist, so I thought we'll get Matt Kerman to do this mission. So we still have a custom Kerbal featuring in this episode, even though it's not really a rescue. But we find ourselves, of course. Now, all I'm going to do is run all of our science experiments, that being the thermometer, mystery goo, the barometer, and the science junior, as well as, of course, doing a crew report and an EVA report. And then we can just, I guess I did one of those experiments twice, probably the crew report, not sure. And once we've done that, we're basically just going to immediately burn retrograde, and that's going to send us straight back to Kerbin. Off we go. I didn't bother making a maneuver node, and I thought, yeah, let's just get it. It did take a little bit longer than I thought it would. I assumed it would be immediate, so I quickly decided to set Kerbin as my target to make sure I hadn't just misremembered how you're supposed to do this, and no, I was right. It turned out if I'd waited literally a second longer, I would have seen that, yes, I was actually on a course to re-enter Kerbin's sphere of influence without any problems. So, need more haste, less speed, don't I, really? Then we're just going to time warp until we reach... until we enter Kerbin orbit, basically. Now, our periapsis is a little bit high, so I decided to just lower it, but I didn't open the map screen, so I appreciate it's pretty hard for you guys to see what the values are, so I've just zoomed in on that little piece of the UI up there so you can see my periapsis height. That's the mod Kerbal Engineer Redux, if you want to know how I have those numbers there. And there we are. Now we can just, I don't know, descend down to Kerbin. And overall, I'd say it's a pretty easy mission, pretty nice sort of interim mission if you're just a little bit short on science points, like you're just a little bit close to getting something, you're not quite there yet. This is a really easy mission to do in career mode, and you can certainly do much more budget friendly options if you are doing career rather than science mode. So this was a fairly expensive rocket for what we really used it for. To make it cheaper for career mode people, where obviously the cost of parts becomes a factor, you could use like solid rocket boosters instead of the old school Falcon Heavy style rocket that I used, or you could even maybe use like an air launch system or like an SSTO or something. I can't remember what parts we got, but I think a very basic SSTO is probably possible at this point in the tech tree, but it's not the easiest thing in the world. So, but I really would have to review what parts I have before I go making outlandish statements like that. So don't quote me on that. Someone is definitely going to do that thing in the comments where they write that and then quote me anyway. Please don't do that. I'll be very disappointed if you do. Thank you. And there we are, touched down. So I'll do a quick, cheeky EVA report, a trivial amount of science from getting science from the grasslands. Is this the grasslands? Yeah, it is the grasslands. I've probably played too much of this game, haven't I? And then Matt Kerman can get back on board and we can recover the vessel and finally unlock the science to, finally unlock the nuclear engine. So we, where's that node? Where's that pesky node? Oh, I think I was just having a look at what we had and, oh, yes. I'm still 40 points short. So this whole mission was a complete waste of time. Basically, I only earned 190 science, I guess, from this mission, and I needed to earn more than that, 40 points more than that. So, was there a moral to this story? I'm not really sure. Here I am just, oh gosh, I should put a headphone warning for that laugh. That was very loud. Yeah, I don't know what to do now. I think I just decided to we'll just unlock some random thing. And that's it. What a disappointment. And that could really be, you know, a summary of this channel, which is kindly supported by the names on screen, my channel members and generous patrons who help make all of this content possible. If you'd like to join their magnificent ranks, you can do so via the on-screen or in description links. And there's 2 videos on screen from my channel. And that's it. That's the end of this.